So good afternoon, everyone. This is Audrey Russo, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council and a subsidiary called 40 by 80. That's our nonprofit charitable arm of the Tech Council. That's the longitude and latitude of Pittsburgh. And that's where we work on all things that are related to education and entrepreneurship. So I'm thrilled to be here. This is another topic that I'm absolutely passionate about. So are my colleagues, as well as most of our membership. So we're really thrilled to have Pennsylvania Representative Wendi Thomas with us. And we're going to talk about startup investor tax credit. So hold on, have your lunch, put your seatbelt on, because we're going to dive into all that she is leading. And I'm pretty excited about that. So I also want to give a shout out to Huntington Bank for them believing in our work and taking chances on us in terms of the experiments that we run each and every day. And I think that this is probably like our 280 something that we've done since the start of COVID. And hopefully we're going to see some sunshine and some breakthrough of some positive returning to the world soon. So stay tuned to our next pivot in terms of what we're going to be working on to make sure that the community is tethered together. So we've muted your microphones. Just want everyone to know your microphones are muted on purpose because we want to make sure that we hear our guest. And Wendi, representative, has already told us that she is sitting in an old schoolhouse and the acoustics might be a little loud or might be a little off, but we tested it and I think it's fine. We have Jonathan Kirsting here with us each and every day. He's vice president of all things media and marketing, tells a lot of stories, interviews people, shines the light on almost everything that's happening across Southwestern Pennsylvania in terms of innovation, technology, and people building companies. So we have an opportunity for questions in our chat. Jonathan will keep his eyes on that to make sure that if we have time and as it makes sense to ask the questions that affect each and every one of us. So I'm pretty excited about this and very thrilled to bring up Representative Thomas. Why do I keep saying Davis? That's terrible. That's terrible. So please forgive me. Please forgive me. I am really, really thrilled to have you here. So before we start, I also want to give a shout out to AT&T. AT&T has been incredible partners with us on all things public policy. And if you don't know about some of the other things that they've done since the onset of COVID, they have made sure that people have access to wireless. They've been for Wi-Fi. They've made sure that we get access into the schools. They've even helped with the food banks. It's been nonstop. So they have really been tremendous in terms of our partnership in terms of public policy. And so they today are also supporting this conversation. So Representative, before we talk about the startup investor tax credit, can we just take a few minutes just to talk about you and your background and even the area that you cover? So
sure.
Tell us a little
absolutely.
bit.
And I am equally as passionate. So the two of us ought to have a very lively conversation today. My background is I spent almost 30 years in business, but the first 20 were in healthcare, health insurance, employee benefit area. So that is a background of mine. But in the mid 2005-ish, I went to a company called Health Advocate, which is an employee benefit that advocates for people as they try to navigate through healthcare. We could have a long conversation about that someday. I'm super passionate about it, but it was an idea that somebody had, and they went out, and Pennsylvania company, they went out looking for investment, they got investment, and we built that company. And ultimately it was sold for a great deal of money, but it's a tremendous benefit. It's a tremendous concept, but it was a startup. It was a startup, and I learned a lot from that. In addition to that, I also sat on a school board for 10 years, and that's kind of how I ended up as a state rep. One of my previous state reps came to me and said, "Would you run?" And I was like, "No, are you crazy?" And then here I am. So it's been a great journey. I'm in the beginning of my second term, or beginning of year 3, really. So that's a little bit of my background.
So
and where
your area. What do you cover?
Yeah, I'm in Bucks County. So Washington Crossing for history buffs, any history buffs, or New Hope is another famous place. Yeah. I cover 5 little towns in the center of Bucks County.
That's nice. It's beautiful out there. So I'm so glad that you're joining us today. And we can talk a little bit about that side of the state, but we want to brag a little bit about Southwest Pennsylvania, just in all fairness. So we're thrilled to have you here. Are you a native of Bucks County?
No, Montgomery County. So actually, I've lived mostly in the East, but 2 weekends ago, I happened to be in Pittsburgh. I have, my husband's from the center of the state, Danville, but the rest of his family went to Pittsburgh, and he and I, Philadelphia side of the state.
Okay.
So I love Pittsburgh. It's a beautiful area. Had a great time when I was there.
Good. So next time you're here, please call us so that we can meet and continue to dive into this, as well as all the health advocacy work that you just articulated, because that's also near and dear to our heart. So really appreciate it. Glad you're safe and sound, and appreciate hearing about your background. So how has your district been impacted though by the pandemic? Can you just do like a little retro in terms of the last 15, 16 months?
Yeah, my particular district is mostly suburban, but I do have a couple downtowns, and we sadly lost some of our small businesses. It's taken a toll on everyone, but I do feel the resurgence. I feel the district, and I know you guys feel it out there. As I drove to Pittsburgh, and the amount of traffic that I had to do to get to where I was going in Pittsburgh, I was like, whoa, Pittsburgh's back. Everybody's out in their cars. Which was good to see. But my district's also, we're starting, things are starting to come back. The weather is nice. We're getting outside. So we get some of those small businesses back. They were the most impacted. That's really, we'll be in good shape.
That's great. So you also, have talked a lot about the importance of Pennsylvania's, healthcare workers, but recently you convened a hearing about mental health, right? And of those frontline heroes. So can you talk a little bit about what you discovered, what you heard?
Yeah, as I would say early this year, I had this mind thought of, we're going to be post-pandemic, vaccines are coming out, but I've heard, and a passion of mine is also mental health and advocating for mental health and recognizing mental health. A lot of my time on school board, we worked with that, dealt with that, the student whole wellness idea. But as we were coming out of the pandemic, there were 3 groups of people that I think have been tremendously impacted. And one is all of our first responders, our healthcare workers, that kind of whole group that stood with us. And the second was our seniors, and the third is our kids, not necessarily in that order, but those were the 3 groups. So we had a hearing as we started this on healthcare workers, and we heard from doctors, from nurses, about the evolution of their mental health through the pandemic. I was actually, hearing from some local physicians that I'm friendly with in December and January, they were concerned about the mental health. And the description, I think we kind of all know this, but the description of those healthcare workers saying, typically I'm a nurse in a hospital and I'm there to help you medically, and I do provide some support. But in COVID, with no family members, I not only had to be that nurse, I had to be your family. I had to stand with you. And sadly, the people they stood with who passed, and it really has taken a toll on them. Yeah. So we've introduced our first bill. We hope it's going to run before the end of the month to support an awareness campaign, because there is mental health support for our first responders and our healthcare workers. We need them to know that it's there and it's okay to go and get some help. We need to break down some of those barriers.
Yeah, the stigma remains, but I can't even imagine, based on people who are alone, and that's how they're spending their last days, and our frontline workers seeing that all day long, day in and day out. So I applaud you. I applaud you for that. We all need to raise that awareness and that eradicate that stigma.
It was tremendously moving. Actually, we were very fortunate. We had over 20 legislators attend, bipartisan, and hear their stories and listen to them and really be concerned about it. And so we hope to help. Thank you.
Thanks for your leadership on that. So listen, so now we're here. We want to talk about the legislation that you are advocating for that would help address one of the biggest challenges that are impacting early stage companies and many businesses, which is really startup capital. So you've announced a proposal, right, that would help specifically enhance the availability of angel investment resources in Pennsylvania. So talk about the bill, talk about the why, and obviously, if you can hear your passion around business as well through the beginning of this conversation. But just tell us about it. Give us the scoop.
So I was fortunate to be appointed to a group that was, around economic recovery that leadership put together. And my passion, even pre-COVID, has been biotech in the part of the state that I sit in. We go right over the water to Jersey, and they have all these biotech firms and all stuff. And I want them to come on this side of the river into Pennsylvania. And we all know tech emerging across the whole state. We have great educational institutions. So I think because I was vocal about that in my first 2 years, when they put this group together, they said, we want you to be part of the group and we want you to look at, targeted investment. Where can we grow? What should we focus on? So in spending a great deal of time on that, I actually met a man who's my constituent, and he has a biotech firm. I met him and I talked to him. What was his experience? He had worked in a pharma company for a long time. And in 2002, he started a biotech. And he talked to me about all the challenges he went through. He ended up selling that near 2010. And he is now a new idea and he's starting again. And he just shared with me the frustration of finding investors and having to go out of state to find them. And then he said, and if my company is successful, my investors want me to be closer to them. So, the trajectory here was not very good. Even if you could convince them to give you money, you came here, you started, if that company grew, they're going to want you to, and again, your side of the state maybe is Ohio in that direction. My side is New York,
Right. And
people
New Jersey, right?
Right, New Jersey, New York. And, we just had a long conversation about his frustration. And then he actually took me to a biotech center that's a group of biotechs. I met some other companies and they also expressed this concern for investment. So worked with some people back at the house, did some research, learned that an angel investment tax credit had been proposed but never got passed. So we just mulled it over and said, in an ideal world, the world of tax credits, is this big world, and it doesn't always have a lot of support because they're all over the map. We don't know what we get for them. But unless we're going to revise the entire tax credit unless we're going to soup to nuts do it, which is a big task and many years long, we have to keep with this. So for that reason, I think making a statement that Pennsylvania is open for business. We want you to invest here. We want angel investment. We have great ideas here. We want you to come. This state has to back that up with tax policy. Because I can go out all day long and say, come to Bucks County, come to Pittsburgh, come here, open your business. But if my policies don't back up that message, nobody hears me. Mm-hmm. And I know that you guys do a great job advocating for tech in Pittsburgh. But to get these investors to come, and I think you've built a great community, but statewide, we should really have that message out there. Come here, we want you here, we understand your value, and because of that, we're willing to give you something for it.
What are you proposing? So can you talk about what's being proposed?
I can. And I'm just gonna pull my co-sponsor memo up. So for those who might not know, when you have an idea, you put out something called a co-sponsor to the other legislators. And basically, it's somebody who has a new idea or a new product, fewer than 100 employees, and they would registered as a qualified startup business and be eligible for a 25% tax credit.
Okay. And so what exists today? Nothing, right? Nothing.
Nope, just my invitation to come bring your business to Pennsylvania. That's it. That hasn't generated a ton of people coming, but I'm still asking, please come. Yeah, I mean, there's many things that I really spent hours looking at this, the January, February, March, really a lot of hours trying to look at different ideas. And there are a plethora of them in other states and some states who do it really well. But this idea, the reason I really focused on this is because it's quick, it can happen easy, and it sends that message. Come here, invest. One other interesting thing, the gentleman I met with, he said the people who typically invest in the biotech, none of those investors are located in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Zero.
Mhm.
He said they don't even have what do you call it?
Shingle. They don't have a
Yeah, they
shingle.
don't even have a shingle. No shingle. I'm like, how can that be?
Mhm. And it's harder for you over there because of New Jersey. You're right there in New Jersey and New York, where they're just saying it's only an hour or so away. Right.
That's correct. And we're already this side on biotech. We're usually rated 5 or 7 in the country. So we have all the big universities.
Oh, yeah.
So if we just did a little bit more, maybe
Right.
we could be number 1 or number 2.
It's amazing what actually exists there. So there's a couple of questions I want Jonathan to grab and to ask. You see the one from Christine?
Absolutely. Good questions here. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you here and talking what we're talking about. So Christine wants to know, how does a tax credit help companies that are not yet profitable? Can the credits be sold to profitable companies in exchange for cash?
That is traditionally how they've been done. We're still working on the details of legislation and we're still taking input on that. But traditionally that's how it's done. So they generate money for the company as they're sold.
Right. And does the tax credit accrue to the angel investor at 25% of their investment?
Is that
That's the general proposal.
Okay, excellent.
And so the general proposal, are you starting from scratch or are you copying any of these other states that have done a good job?
So we started with the bill from 2015, actually, because that was already written for Pennsylvania tax code.
Okay.
And then we have gathered information from the other states and we're trying to see what compiles and what makes sense here. And then we have to kind of fit it into Pennsylvania law.
So we're talking about angel investors. So can we shift a little bit and talk about venture capital?
Yeah.
Can we talk about that? Because that's an incredibly important piece of, our ecosystem as well.
It is. Yeah, I had some experience when we were building the company. I was really a worker, not one of the key people going out, but I watched the owners go fly around the country to get VC money to come to Pennsylvania for their idea. And it can be very challenging. Now I know you guys have some experience with VC as well.
Oh yeah, we definitely do. I mean, you heard before the show, Brian Kennedy was talking about in the last couple of years, over 70 venture firms that are from outside the region invested into our region. And that, I think that represents, at 70 companies, I really want to say it's almost like 80%. 80% of that money comes in from outside the region. And thankfully, at the state level, we have the Ben Franklins, the BFTDAs that are actually helping to spawn some of this innovation at the sort of like the nascent level, but they're first in and they're taking risks on many, many things across the ecosystem.
The Bens are actually how I met the constituent from my district who started his business. So they had to put out an announcement of some of the companies they had invested in, and I saw his name and where he was from, and I actually connected through them. I think the Bens have done a really good job, and we need to continue to encourage that. And in fact, what I heard on a call is back when we first started investing with the Bens, Pennsylvania was kind of a leader in that area. But unfortunately, I think since that time, people have surpassed us. And Pennsylvania really needs to take a hard look at what we are doing to attract business, what results we're getting for what we're doing. I always say this about state government. I say, if you are running this as a business, all you business people on here, you take your investment, you look at your results, and you do an evaluation, an ROI, if you will. State government does not exactly work that way.
Really?
Those of us who have a business background are always like, where's the chart? The investment, the result. So the results, get published in a report here or there, but it's not it's not a consolidated, it's a little hard to put your arms around. I think there are over 47 economic development programs sponsored by the state, but they're all over. And so we really have to, I believe, focus on ones where we know we're going to attract business to Pennsylvania. Another interesting fact you guys might like it, and I don't have the latest one, but the pre-COVID, the information I had, the only growing population in the state of Pennsylvania, 85 plus.
That's what's growing, 85 plus in the whole state.
85-year-olds and
Well,
old.
there's a lot of great, bio research on lifespan. So it could be that those people who are 85 plus live at least another 20 years now.
I think it's to the dual Pennsylvanians live here their whole lives. They stay here, they live here, but what we're not doing is attracting the young people. And these startup companies, that's who they can attract. These technology companies, this is where the younger generation is really interested. And the marriage between those ideas, our universities and our business community, with the state saying, yes, we want this and we'll back it up and we'll help you, is really where I think we need to go.
Okay, so we have a couple of questions out there that I want Jonathan to grab, and then I want to ask one of the questions on some other things that you're working on as well.
Absolutely. Let's go to Natalie Nunez is here. It's good to see her again. Haven't seen her in a while. This is a good question here. So some professors at CMU, NYU, and UCLA did some research on the economic impact of these kinds of tax incentives. And their conclusion was, quote, "We find that while they increase angel investment, they have no significant effect on entrepreneurial activity." And that's, she has the source there listed below there if people want to go click the link and read more about it. So any thoughts on how Pittsburgh would be different in this regard from the study?
I don't know. That's a hard, probably without, do you want to attack that, Representative?
Yeah, I don't know the study well enough to
Right.
probably fully properly respond. I do think it probably is a little hard to draw the lines I was just saying that would be nice to have on ROI. You invest, it probably is hard to do that on this tax credit as well. But I have heard it from people who are trying to start businesses here that this is a point of frustrations. And, my worry would be that people will go other places. Maybe we can't track the growth, but we can at least keep what we have here. And, if people can go to Ohio on your side of the state, or go to New Jersey on my side of the state, or Maryland, wherever you are, New York, and get advantages, we're not going to even know we lost them. We're just going to have them. So I think this is about right now, it's about us just trying to stay competitive with, it's not about an advantage. It's more about staying competitive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I just tagged that article so I can read it. There's lots of variables that are tied to it. It is one study. And, we've been involved with the Kaufman Institute on, we brought them in and had them talk to us over the years, benchmarking. We've had lots of studies in our city. But the point is feeding the current yield. That's really what the issue is. It's feeding the current yield. And when people know that there's opportunities for them to proliferate, that's when the growth does occur. So I have to read that report.
Yeah, we got the link there, so that's great.
Is there another question in there,
yeah.
John?
So the one and only John Denny, so glad to see him here. He would like to learn a little bit more about House Bill 1200, the Family Care Act. Switching gears a little bit.
So when I was in Pittsburgh 2 weeks ago, I actually went to one of your wonderful employers, JV Manufacturing, and we talked about paid family leave. So I am the prime sponsor on paid family leave. And the bill would basically say everybody in the state puts a teeny bit in to the fund. And at the time at which you or a family member is sick, you'd get a little bit money out just to sustain you. And very frankly, business traditionally goes, oh no, another something else for a business to pay for, or et cetera. But this is about us all putting in and all getting out. And the other thing is, after we've been through COVID, is there anybody who doesn't think that at some point in your life, you're going to be sick or you're going to need to take care of a family member? And I had a business owner tell me, not to discount having children, I have 3, but you know, for the most part, people plan and save and do that. But when your parent suddenly gets sick and you're suddenly off work, as
Right.
she was in the last 6 weeks of her mother's life, she was afraid she couldn't keep the lights on and keep her 2 employees.
Mhm.
And, you know, that's where it convinced me, like, if we could all put a little away, then we could all get just a little bit back to sustain us through a difficult time. That paid family leaves time really has come. And here in Pennsylvania, you know, I've said before that the young people aren't growing. We want families to come first. We want people to come here and work. We're family friendly. We have good ideas and we want angel investors. We can do it all.
Well, so how do you think, you know, with the budget, we're set to pass a budget. Can I put you on the spot for that? What do you think in the, you know, that's like the coming weeks, if we do it on time? How is the Commonwealth doing from a budget perspective?
Well, you know, the federal government is giving the
Right.
state money. And frankly, if they weren't, we would be in serious
Mhm.
trouble. I think that, you know, we're going to have to see how it goes, the give and takes. It takes 3 of us, the House, the Senate, and the governor to agree. So that's always challenging. But, you know, from my perspective, you got to be cautious when you get one-time money. You have to be careful how you spend it and what you do. You don't want to set yourself up for failure. You know, when I got to legislature, I believe the statistic was we had 2 or 3 hours worth of money in the rainy day fund. It was, yeah, I see your faces. And then in June of 19, we had a little surplus. We put half of it in the rainy day fund. So I think we're at 6 or 8 hours. And we spent the rest of it. So, you know, it's definitely going to be a challenge to make sure that we can get through it, balance it, but not go
Right.
overboard.
Right, because it's not going to be there after. Right.
Right.
We've
It's
seen
not
that
coming
here
next
in the
year.
state of
Right.
Pennsylvania. We've seen that. So, right. I mean, it's a good point to reiterate. So how do we stay connected to your work on this angel tax credit initiative, whatever, you know, this bill? How do we stay connected? How do you get our voices?
So, you know, we have a study to look at and things, and people want to share information. They can do that with me, through me in my Harrisburg office. Email works great. And I don't know if Brian or somebody wants to put it up, but it's wthomas@pahousegop.com.
Okay.
Or, you know, you can call my Harrisburg office. My website's repthomas.com, super easy. You can get to me through that as well. If you have ideas, thoughts, concerns, experience, I am not an angel investor personally. So, you know, for me, this is always listening and learning and making sure that we make this the best legislation we can, because the goal is to help the state, help bring business here, and help us all grow.
Well, my hat's off to you to bringing this back up, honestly. And I do want to remind, John Denny put a note out there. And if you go out to YouTube, you'll see a video that we made a few years ago called the Pittsburgh Pivot. And you can see that we had an interview with former Governor Thornburg, who talked about how he actually started the BFTDA, SSTI, the founding of the Pittsburgh Tech Council, you know, everything that happened at that point in time. So this has been a long time running. Governor Thornburg definitely had an amazing vision that is still being used today at DCED. And, you know, we still have work to do, you know, almost 40 years later, we still have work to do, and it's never going to stop. But I just so appreciate your leadership on this. We'll stay connected to you. Really appreciate you being open, and you know, we'll get feedback for you as well. So thank you for your time. I think your acoustics were perfect. So
good.
Don't worry about being in there. Really appreciate it. And everyone stay safe. Is there anything, Jonathan, about Friday? Is tomorrow's Friday?
Tomorrow's Friday, and we're taking the day off to enjoy this nice weather. And we'll be back on the 25th with PA Senator Bob Mensch to talk about the Clean Infrastructure Act. So
great. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Thomas.
Thank you. Bye-bye.